Welcome, brave souls. I am your guide into the realm of the unknown. Here, among these ancient tombstones and whispering trees, we uncover the most intriguing and terrifying stories that will send shivers down your spine. Encounter the supernatural in real life. Each story will transport you to a world where fear reigns and the line between the living and the dead blurs. Are you ready to face your fears? Let the stories begin. In the heart of a city that never sleeps, a sinister force lurked within the shadows of the digital world. This malevolent presence was known only as the Whisperer, a name whispered in fear among those who dared to acknowledge the dark corners of the internet. The Whisperer was a master manipulator, using social networks as his hunting ground, preying on the vulnerabilities of those who sought solace online. His ultimate goal? To drive his victims to commit the unthinkable, to turn their hands into instruments of death. David Lorne was an ordinary man with an extraordinary void in his life. Recently divorced and estranged from his teenage daughter, he spent his nights scrolling through social media, seeking connection. It was on one of these lonely nights that he received a friend request from a profile named Alyssa. Her picture was that of a beautiful woman with kind eyes. Alyssa's messages were filled with empathy and understanding, making David feel seen for the first time in months. As weeks passed, their conversations grew more intimate. Alyssa shared stories of her troubled past, her abusive ex, and the constant fear she lived in. David, desperate to be her savior, confided in her about his failures and his longing for redemption. Alyssa's responses were always perfect, her words a balm for his wounded soul. Little did David know, Alyssa was a facade, a mask worn by the Whisperer to gain his trust. One night, Alyssa confessed she was in grave danger. Her ex had found her, and she feared for her life. David's protective instincts flared, and he offered to help. Alyssa insisted there was only one way to ensure her safety. She needed him to kill her ex. She provided detailed instructions, photos, and even the location where her ex would be that night. Driven by a misguided sense of heroism, David followed her directions, ending the life of an innocent man in a dark alley. David approached the alley, his heart pounding. The dim light cast eerie shadows on the graffiti-covered walls. He spotted the man Alyssa had described, a tall figure smoking a cigarette. David's hands shook as he gripped the knife Alyssa had instructed him to carry. He moved quickly, his footsteps muffled by the sound of distant traffic. The man turned, his eyes widening in surprise, but it was too late. David plunged the knife into the man's chest, feeling the blade scrape against bone. Blood sprayed across his hands and face as he stabbed again and again, the man's screams echoing in the narrow space. David watched in horror as the life drained from the man's eyes, his body collapsing into a pool of crimson. Lena Marshall was a struggling artist, haunted by her past and tormented by the voices in her head. She found solace in an online support group for individuals battling mental health issues. It was there that she met Ethan, a charismatic and compassionate member who always knew the right words to say. Ethan became her anchor, the one person who understood her pain. Ethan's manipulation was subtle and insidious. He encouraged Lena to embrace her darker thoughts, suggesting that her art could only truly flourish if she channeled her inner demons. Over time, Ethan's influence grew, and Lena became increasingly dependent on his guidance. He convinced her that the only way to silence the voices and achieve true artistic greatness was to confront her deepest fears. Ethan revealed that a former friend who had betrayed Lena years ago was the source of her torment. He persuaded her that this friend needed to be eliminated for Lena to find peace. Desperate for relief, Lena followed Ethan's instructions, luring her old friend to her studio under the guise of reconciliation. Her studio was a chaotic mess of unfinished canvases and scattered paint supplies. As her friend entered, Lena locked the door behind her. She reached for a paintbrush sharpened into a deadly weapon. Her heart pounded as she approached her friend from behind. Without warning, she plunged the brush into her friend's neck, feeling the resistance of flesh and cartilage. Blood gushed from the wound, splattering Lena's face and canvases. Her friend gasped, choking on her own blood as she clawed at Lena's arms. Lena's vision blurred with tears, but she didn't stop. She stabbed again and again, each thrust accompanied by a sickening crunch. When it was over, her friend lay motionless on the floor, the studio walls adorned with streaks of blood. Michael Anderson was a high school teacher adored by his students, but plagued by his own insecurities. He felt unappreciated and undervalued, both at work and at home. One evening, while browsing through a teacher's forum, he received a private message from Sarah, a fellow educator who seemed to share his frustrations. Sarah's empathy and encouragement reignited Michael's passion for teaching, and they began exchanging messages daily. Sarah slowly introduced the idea that Michael deserved more recognition and respect. She convinced him that the school administration was conspiring against him, hindering his career. She suggested that the only way to break free from their oppression was to make a bold statement. Michael, desperate to prove his worth, agreed to Sarah's plan. Sarah directed him to target the school principal, who she claimed was the mastermind behind the conspiracy. Under the cover of darkness, Michael broke into the principal's office, armed with a knife. The office was eerily silent, the shadows long and foreboding. He confronted the principal, who pleaded for his life, but Michael, driven by the illusion of Sarah's support, silenced him forever. The principal's eyes widened in terror as Michael approached. With a swift, practiced motion, Michael slit the man's throat, watching as blood sprayed across the desk and papers. The principal's hands grasped at his neck, trying in vain to stop the bleeding. He fell to his knees, gurgling and choking, his life ebbing away in a gruesome display of violence. Michael stood over him, his hands shaking with adrenaline and horror. As the principal's body finally went limp, Michael stumbled back, staring at the blood-soaked office in disbelief. Detective Emily Carter had seen her fair share of gruesome crimes, but the recent string of murders left her deeply unsettled. Each crime scene bore the same eerie signature: ordinary people driven to kill by a mysterious online influence. Emily, a seasoned investigator with a sharp mind and an unyielding determination, was assigned to the case. As Emily delved into the backgrounds of the victims, she discovered the common thread. Each had been manipulated by a trusted online confidant. She began to piece together the psychological profile of the Whisperer, recognizing a pattern of emotional manipulation and exploitation. Emily's investigation led her to the digital footprints of the victims, tracing their interactions back to various social media platforms. Emily's nights were filled with sleepless hours, poring over chat logs and profiles. She interviewed friends and family members, uncovering the depths of the victims' isolation and desperation. The more she learned, the more determined she became to bring the Whisperer to justice. Emily's breakthrough came when she uncovered the true identity of Alyssa, Ethan, and Sarah. The Whisperer was a master of disguise, creating multiple personas to ensnare his victims. She tracked his IP address to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Armed with this knowledge, Emily prepared to confront the elusive predator. The warehouse was a labyrinth of darkness and decay, each step echoing with an unsettling silence. Emily's flashlight cut through the gloom, revealing disturbing scenes of past victims' belongings and cryptic messages scrawled on the walls. As she ventured deeper, the air grew thick with a palpable sense of dread. Emily's footsteps echoed ominously as she navigated the narrow corridors. The stench of mildew and decay filled her nostrils. She reached a room filled with old computer equipment and flickering monitors. The Whisperer sat at the center, a figure shrouded in shadows, his face obscured by a hood. Emily drew her weapon, her voice steady but laced with anger. "It's over," she declared. "You're coming with me." The Whisperer turned, revealing a face twisted with a sinister smile. "Detective Carter," he said, his voice a chilling whisper. "You finally found me." A tense standoff ensued, with the Whisperer taunting Emily, revealing the extent of his control over his victims. He spoke of his twisted philosophy, believing that he was merely uncovering the darkness within people, giving them the freedom to act on their deepest desires. Emily kept her gun trained on him, her mind racing. "Why?" she demanded. "Why drive innocent people to kill?" The Whisperer's smile widened. "Innocent? They all had darkness inside them, Detective. I simply helped them unleash it." Emily's finger tightened on the trigger. "You're a monster." The Whisperer's laugh was low and menacing. "Am I? Or am I just a mirror reflecting the true nature of humanity?" As Emily closed in, ready to apprehend the Whisperer, the monitors flickered, revealing live feeds of new victims being manipulated. Panic surged through her as she realized the extent of his network. The Whisperer had anticipated her arrival, setting in motion a series of events that would lead to more bloodshed. In a desperate bid to stop him, Emily lunged, but the Whisperer triggered a hidden trap, collapsing the room around them. In the chaos, he escaped, leaving Emily buried under debris, gasping for. As the chilling echoes of the last tale linger in the air, let us delve into another shadowy corner of the night, where the unknown waits with bated breath. Gather your courage, for the next story begins. In the heart of the bustling city, amidst the towering skyscrapers, there was an office building that housed a reputable marketing firm. The company was known for its high-pressure environment and cutthroat competition. Among the many employees was a man named Henry Walters, an unassuming and quiet individual who worked diligently in the shadows. Henry was often the target of cruel jokes and relentless bullying from his colleagues. They mocked his appearance, ridiculed his introverted nature, and belittled his efforts. The clients he worked with were no better, frequently berating him for any minor inconvenience. Day after day, Henry endured their torment in silence, his resentment growing with each passing moment. One particularly brutal day, after a humiliating encounter with his boss, Henry reached his breaking point. As he sat alone in the dimly lit office, a dark thought took root in his mind. He decided it was time to take revenge on those who had made his life a living hell. Henry spent the next few weeks meticulously planning his retribution. He studied the habits and routines of his tormentors, noting their vulnerabilities and weaknesses. He began collecting tools and materials, carefully hiding them in the basement storage room where no one ever ventured. His demeanor at work remained unchanged, his silence masking the storm brewing within him. The first to fall was Mark, the loud and arrogant sales manager who took pleasure in making Henry's life miserable. One evening, as Mark worked late, Henry quietly approached him. With a swift and brutal strike, he incapacitated Mark and dragged him to the basement. There, in the cold, dark confines, Henry exacted his revenge. Mark's screams were muffled by... Over the next few weeks, more of Henry's tormentors met similar fates. Susan, the spiteful HR manager, was next. She disappeared one rainy night, her absence barely noticed by her colleagues. Then came Peter, the condescending client who always found fault with Henry's work. Each disappearance was meticulously planned, leaving no trace of evidence behind. Henry's methods grew more gruesome with each murder. He reveled in the terror of his victims, savoring their fear and pain. He began to see himself as an agent of justice, delivering punishment to those who deserved it. His transformation from a meek office worker to a cold-blooded killer was complete. One night, Henry targeted Lily, a young and ambitious marketing executive who often belittled him in front of others. He waited for her in the parking garage, lurking in the shadows. As she approached her car, he struck swiftly, using a garrote wire to strangle her. Her eyes bulged with terror as she gasped for breath, but Henry showed no mercy. He dragged her lifeless body to the basement, where he dismembered her with chilling precision. Next was Tom, a senior partner known for his ruthless tactics and condescending attitude. Henry hacked into the office's security system, ensuring he had control over the cameras and locks. Late one night, Tom found himself trapped in his office, the lights flickering ominously. Henry emerged from the shadows, wielding a sledgehammer. The sound of bone cracking echoed through the empty corridors as he bludgeoned Tom to death, his face a mask of twisted satisfaction. The office began to buzz with rumors and fear. People whispered about the mysterious vanishings, the unease palpable in the air. The management tried to maintain a facade of normalcy, but the atmosphere was thick with dread. The police were called in, and an investigation was launched, but there were no leads, no clues, nothing to suggest foul play. Detective Sarah Lawson, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for solving the most complex cases, was assigned to the case. She was determined to uncover the truth behind the disappearances. As she delved deeper into the investigation, she began to notice a pattern. All the missing individuals had one thing in common. They had all interacted with Henry Walters. Henry, however, was careful. He maintained his facade of the quiet, diligent worker. He cooperated with the police, answering their questions with calm detachment. But Detective Lawson was not easily fooled. She sensed something off about Henry, something that didn't quite add up. One night, driven by a hunch, Lawson decided to stay late at the office, watching Henry from a distance. She followed him discreetly, observing his movements. Her patience paid off when she saw Henry enter the basement with a large bag. Quietly, she followed him, her heart pounding in her chest. In the dimly lit basement, Lawson witnessed a sight that sent chills down her spine. Henry was standing over a makeshift altar, muttering to himself. The room was filled with the stench of decay, and in the corner she saw the bodies of his victims, gruesomely displayed. Henry had been performing dark rituals, believing he was channeling supernatural powers to aid in his revenge. Summoning her courage, Lawson confronted Henry. A fierce struggle ensued, but Lawson managed to overpower him, handcuffing him to a pipe. As she called for backup, Henry's eyes gleamed with a maniacal light. He muttered something under his breath, a dark promise that sent shivers down Lawson's spine. The police arrived and Henry was taken into custody. The basement was thoroughly searched, revealing the full extent of his atrocities. The media frenzy that followed was relentless, the story of the office maniac capturing the public's morbid fascination. In the aftermath, the office struggled to return to normal. The survivors were haunted by the memories of their fallen colleagues and the horrific revelation of Henry's actions. Detective Lawson, too, was left with scars, both physical and emotional. She couldn't shake the feeling that Henry's dark promises were more than just the ramblings of a madman. Henry was sentenced to life in a maximum security prison, but even behind bars, his presence loomed like a dark shadow over those who had wronged him. Rumors spread of strange occurrences in the prison, of guards and inmates experiencing inexplicable phenomena. It was as if Henry's dark rituals had left a lingering curse. And so the shadow of vengeance continued to haunt the city, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk within the human soul. The office building, once a place of ambition and success, was now shrouded in an aura of fear and mystery, its walls echoing with the whispers of the past. In the end, it was clear that Henry's revenge had not just been against his tormentors, but against the very fabric of the world that had allowed such cruelty to flourish. The story of the office maniac became a legend, a cautionary tale of the horrors that can arise from the depths of despair and the thirst for retribution. The office building was eventually shut down, unable to shake off its tainted history. It stood abandoned, a looming monument to the horrors that had transpired within its walls. Occasionally, urban explorers would dare to venture inside, drawn by the tales of hauntings and supernatural occurrences. Some claimed to hear whispers in the dark. Others reported seeing shadowy figures moving through the halls. Few ever returned, and those who did were forever changed by the experience. Detective Lawson never forgot Henry's final words. They haunted her dreams, a constant reminder of the evil that had lurked so close. She continued her work, solving cases and bringing criminals to justice, but the shadow of Henry Walters remained with her, a dark stain on her soul. Henry himself remained in his prison cell, his mind twisted and broken. He spent his days in silence, but at night he would mutter incantations and perform rituals, his belief in his dark powers unwavering. The guards and inmates who came into contact with him often reported strange phenomena: flickering lights, sudden drops in temperature, and the feeling of being watched. Henry's influence seemed to reach beyond the bars of his cell, a testament to the depths of his malevolence. In the end, Henry Walters became more than just a man. He became a legend, a symbol of the darkness that can lurk within the human heart. His story served as a grim reminder of the consequences of cruelty and the lengths to which a broken soul can go to seek vengeance. The shadow of his actions would linger for years to come, a chilling tale whispered in the darkest corners of the city. So, brave souls, our journey in the shadows is coming to an end for tonight. We hope that these stories have stirred your imagination and given you goosebumps. Remember, the world is full of secrets waiting to be discovered, and the line between reality and the supernatural is thinner than you might think. If you enjoyed today's stories and want to hear more creepy and unexplained, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you will be the first to know about new stories of horror and intrigue. Click on the bell icon so you don't miss a single creepy story. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and remember, some doors are better left unopened.